Welcome to the Mind Myself podcast. I'm Esther, and it is my pleasure to be bringing you information about healthcare approaches, health issues, and people's health journey stories, all from the complementary, holistic, and integrative perspectives, helping you become your own best health advocate and helping you make your own informed choices because you matter. Welcome to the Mind Myself Conversations with E podcast. I'm Esther, founder and CEO of Mind Myself, and it is my pleasure to welcome our guest to the show today, Adam Stanecki. Adam, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Esther. Glad to be here.
Thank you so much. Before we dive into this amazing topic of breathing, could you tell from his background that we're going to be talking about breath? Tell us a little bit about your credentials, your journey into coming to this place of being a breath geek.
Oh, well, the beautiful thing about the breath is, to a certain extent, everyone's an expert because they've been doing it since the first moment they were alive. So everyone has a beautiful grounding in breathing. My relationship is a little bit different, very intimate, because I was quite terrible at breathing up until the age of maybe 10 or 12. I had severe childhood asthma, hospitalized many times, referred to the nation's top asthma specialist. My parents told me I was quite close to not making it through a couple of asthma attacks. So needless to say, that was pretty stressful on them. So my involvement in breathing and the importance of breathing started really early. So my journey started early. So you could say my education started early as well. And at that time, there was no understanding of the importance of how one would breathe to improve breathing disorders and breathing dysfunction, which to my mind sounds crazy, but it's just a level of beautiful ignorance. It wasn't anything intentional. It just hadn't been considered. So I ended up teaching myself how to breathe through my asthma attacks at underneath the symptoms as a teenager, and then promptly forgot all about it as I turned into a teenager and a young man and knew everything about everything. Of course, I think we all go through that phase. And then I came back to it.
A time or two, probably.
Exactly right. So then I came back to it as I moved into wellness, and I've learned and studied Chinese medicine, hypnosis, fitness, strength and conditioning, many aspects of mental health and wellness and therapy. And of course, I've studied so many different modalities of breath work as well. So it's been a long process of about 20 years of accumulating knowledge with that foundation in breath that has led me to the point where now, when someone comes to me for work, we work on the breath as the foundation of health, wellness, and performance.
Fabulous. And of course, you are from? Where do you live?
I'm from Australia. I was born in Melbourne, born and raised in Melbourne. I actually moved away from Melbourne to help with my breathing because it's a dusty, somewhat polluted and high pollen city. And now I live just out of a little tourist township called Noosa on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland.
Wow. I've actually been there, but it was a long time ago. So, and it's a gorgeous place.
It's paradise.
Indeed. So, Adam, jumping into the conversation around breath work and the secrets to optimal breathing, I know that you have mentioned in a previous conversation about breathing through our noses. Let's just start right there and say, why is it important to breathe through your nose, and what does that actually mean?
Well, the best way I can summarize it is to say, and I don't know where this saying comes from, but like the mouth is for eating and the nose is for breathing. And it's as simple as that. When you look at the structures from an anatomical perspective, you can see what they were built for, let's say, designed for, you might say, developed for. And it's very clear when you look at them that the mouth has no way of improving or at least maintaining the quality of the air as it comes in, whereas the nose has these amazing systems in place whereby it can filter the air, moisten the air, warm the air, even slow down the turbulence of the air. so that air, as it reaches your lungs, is suited for that environment, for the, if you will, for the inside of the lungs. And people can prove this quite quickly by taking a number of breaths through the mouth versus a number of breaths through the nose. And you'll see that one irritates you more than the other, at least in most cases. So people who are coughing, for example, and are taking big breaths in through the mouth tend to irritate the lungs and the airways more, so they cough more. So it's this vicious cycle. So a lot of benefit can be had by simply shutting the mouth and breathing through the nose. In fact, I would say if no one listens to anything else I say on this podcast, that shutting your mouth and breathing through your nose will give you the most benefit of any breathing practice or any breathing system that you can find.
Wow. And I know we're going to talk about sleep and breathing a little bit later in the conversation, so let's not get into it there. But how do you know how much breath to take? And people are always saying, breathe deeper, breathe into your belly. Let's talk about that.
So this is an interesting topic, and one that can start to ruffle feathers depending on what people's level of understanding is, because most people are breathing in excess of their metabolic requirements and are unaware of it. So it's almost as if you had your thermostat at home set a little higher than it should be. So it's too warm in the house for, maybe it's comfortable, but the human body doesn't like it, and you get other problems. It's kind of similar. So that being the case, when most people are used to breathing too much, they will continue breathing too much. It's almost like a habit forms, because breath is this beautiful thing that happens when we don't think about it, and we can become aware of it and control it if we choose to. But for most people, it's not even something that's considered, thought of. It's not in consciousness. And if the pattern of breathing is too great, then it continues to be too great. And that there's a cascading effect of that. So what is the right amount is the amount of breathing that is enough for your metabolic requirements. So
but
it's kind of that.
How would you know what that is? Because I hear so many people saying we breathe too shallowly. We breathe from our upper chest. We don't breathe include our belly, not to exclude our chest. But so let's carry on into that vein too, please.
So we have to break this down in a number of ways, because there are different components of the quality of breathing. So one of them would be where you're breathing. Are you breathing high or are you breathing low? Which is one of the measures you can use to see how well someone's breathing. It's called a high-low test. It's not very adventurously named, but if you're breathing high, it's somewhat dysfunctional because it's up in the upper chest. If you're breathing low, better, maybe ideal. So that's one idea. And the idea of shallow versus deep doesn't speak to volume of breathing. It speaks to where you're breathing. It's location of breathing. So when we talk about volume, we're talking about the amount of air that comes in. Now, that and the rate of breathing is what dictates how much someone's breathing. So if you're breathing fast and big, there's a lot more oxygen coming in and a lot more carbon dioxide going out. Now, most people would recognize that as hyperventilation, which, again, most of us would know is not a good thing. That's a panicked state. It's a dysfunctional state. It's an unhelpful state. So what we need to do is breathe slower, breathe with less volume, and breathe deeper. And then how do you know if that's the right amount for you? Then we can start to put some measurements in place. But for most people, if there is dysfunction, we have to start challenging what's normal right now and look at resetting or normalizing breathing volume and breathing function. So what that is for an individual is where someone like me comes in, because it can be hard to determine that by oneself. You almost need a person who's got some acuity, some ability to assess that.
Absolutely. So could you give us a few examples of what you just said, breathing deep, but less volume, and whatever it was you said? Because I think that, the optimal one, and restate that. So for people like me who've forgotten it already, and then give us some examples of what to do, what not to do.
Okay, so let me give you an acronym that's quite easy to remember, especially anyone who's around in the 60s or has any interest in crazy 60s movies and things like that. LSD.
Okay.
Now, I'm not talking about the psychedelics. I'm just talking about the acronym LSD because it helps get an idea of how to breathe optimally without having to worry about all of the different exercises, patterns, counting when do I apply this and when do I apply that. This is a really lovely acronym to suggest how you could, if not should, be breathing all the time. L is for light, which means it's the opposite of heavy, much like small is the opposite of big. So if you breathe light, it's a gentle breath coming in, a gentle breath going out. It's not rushed, it's not forceful. So that's light. L for light. S for slow. So that's talking about the rate of your breathing. You will notice when someone is scared or anxious, they breathe fast, or if they're panicked, they breathe fast. If they're calm, they breathe slow. So it doesn't take too much mental gymnastics to work out slow's better, at least most of the time. Fast is good if you're being chased by a lion, but most of the time we're not being chased by a lion, so we don't need to be in the state that mimics that. So slow is the rhythm or the rate of your breath. There's an exercise called cadence breathing, which is just slowing down the pace to a certain count that can help with the rate. So L is for light, S is for slow, and D is for deep. So that's talking about drawing the breath in deep into your lungs. The D also stands for diaphragm. So using that big muscle under the ribs below the lungs to pull the air in deep. So light, slow, deep, LSD. Now, you don't have to worry about the technique because most people, when they understand those concepts, can affect those concepts. And if you develop a sensitivity to your breathing, an awareness of what is happening in your breathing, you can witness, you can feel what's going on. It's fairly simple to know when you're breathing fast versus slow, high versus deep, or shallow versus deep, and heavy versus light. Most people can determine that by themselves.
Yeah, that's a good acronym. I've been practicing while you've been talking. And
it happens all the time.
Exactly, of course. As a former singer, I was used to taking deep, deep, full breaths in the belly and not really filling up my chest so much because it was, down there. So I'm like, light, but deep. So that's an interesting shift for me, for sure. Now, I know you have talked about different breathing modalities. What does that mean?
Okay. So first, let me say, if you are singing, you need to breathe the way you need to breathe to sing.
Yes.
Same as if, yeah, exactly right. And you will breathe in through your mouth because sometimes you need that fast intake of breath so you can sing. Same as swimming. You breathe through your mouth when you swim. So me saying breathe through your nose all the time, of course there are caveats.
Okay.
But it's all the time with a little asterisk in the corner saying whenever possible. And you talked about sleep, so we'll get to that in a moment. Now you're asking about modalities. Lots and lots of modalities. Breath work, and that seems to be the term that's coming out now, is becoming very popular. And when most people talk about breath work, they're thinking about the Wim Hof method. They may be thinking about rebirthing or holotropic breath work. And there's a new umbrella term that's coming out now called transformational breath work. And these are, at least the last three, are modalities by which you actually hyperventilate into a state that some people call quantum, some people call an altered state of consciousness, whereby you might be able to work on some kind of emotional block or mental block or something that you want to work through. So it's almost like a self-development method. Holotropic breathwork was developed out of the psychedelic tradition in Harvard as a replacement for the use of LSD and these type of drugs to access those states to have realizations. Rebirthing is quite similar, different tradition, but created around about the same time with a similar tradition. The Wim Hof method was created by Wim Hof, takes from Tibetan breathing and pranayama traditions, and he uses two practices, one based on Tummo and another based on a 3-part yogic breath, for different reasons. he uses it to reduce inflammation, improve your ability to withstand cold, so you can do cold exposure. So you can sort of see already there's these different modalities doing different things. Then you can go all the way back to pranayama, which is the umbrella term for energy work, if you will, which is sort of in the yogic and tantric traditions. And they have hundreds, if not thousands, of different ways to breathe for different purposes, blending into Ayurvedic medicine traditions as well. A more modern approach, you've got the Buteyko method, which came out of the Ukraine with Konstantin Buteyko. And he was a physician who witnessed that the majority of people in his care that had illness were hyperventilating and breathing in a dysfunctional fashion. So he formulated a number of ideas and a hypothesis that some agree with, some don't. And I think that even if you don't agree with his hypothesis, the truth is the exercises work, and we maybe know 80% of why. And even though the 20% is up for debate, we can still point to scientific validation saying this stuff works. So I'm trained in the Buteyko method. Then you have someone like Patrick McKeown, who's my teacher, who learnt from Dr. Buteyko and then expanded on that method and created something he calls the oxygen advantage, which takes those Buteyko method exercises, extends them out into performance, athletic performance, where you go to after you've gotten past illness. So maybe you're back to okay, but you want to expand. And then there are more coming out all the time with different names and different things attached to them. And I could go on and on, but they're effectively the big ones as I see it. And please excuse me if I've missed any that are important to you as you listen to this. You're welcome to contact me and expand my horizons.
There you go. Well, you certainly have a wealth of information. You've done a ton of studying, and it sounds like you had so much practical experience because you've needed to do that. So let's talk about breathing and sleep. Now, so many people have issues with breathing and sleep, and lots of people don't know it. So what's the first sign that somebody would go, oh, maybe I have breathing and sleep? For instance, if they don't sleep with someone else and they're not snoring, how would you know?
Oh, well, you've just shot me down, because the first one I was going to say is if your partner's complaining about your snoring, that's number one.
Yes, of course.
That's definitely number one.
Yes.
So let me just get that elephant out of the room. If you are snoring and it's disturbing your partner, chances are you're breathing through your mouth at night, because there is a very different sound to an oral snore and a nasal snore. Nasal snoring is almost just like loud nasal breathing, which isn't ideal, but it's bearable. And it's not as dysfunctional as mouth breathing at night. So snoring is a big one. If you struggle to get to sleep, stay asleep, that can be an indication of breathing dysfunction, because calm breathing allows you to get to the deeper states of sleep. So the brain waves in sleep, to those deeper aspects, which are where the recovery and recuperation happens. So if you keep waking up tired every morning, chances are you never got that depth of sleep that you need, and breathing may have something to do with it. If you wake up regularly, even if you think you need to wake up to go to the bathroom, often that signal doesn't come through if you're deep in sleep, and you can maintain what's in your bladder overnight. But if you are in a shallow sleep, that signal comes through and you get up, I have to go right now. And then you get up, and by the time you get up, maybe walk down the stairs, do what you've got to do and come back to bed, you're half awake, and then you've got to fall asleep again. So that's definitely part of it. Now, clearly there are sleep studies that can be done, and there's sleep apnea, and there are the more severe aspects of sleep. But for most people, continually feeling tired, feeling restless, waking up often during sleep, all indications of potential breathing dysfunction during sleep. And I would suggest that even outside of that sleeping time, if you have dysfunctional breathing during the day that excites your central nervous system to the point that you can't relax enough to have a deep sleep, then that will affect your breathing as well.
Wow. And so what would somebody do about that? If they suspect that they have, or let's say their partner says, you need some help, go get it. That's one
Yeah.
thing. But if someone suspects they're not getting that clear message, suspects they have a breathing issue, what's the first thing they should do?
So the first thing is to determine if they are mouth breathing at night, which is a difficult one because you're asleep. So if you don't have a partner and your partner or your partner doesn't want to stay up watching you sleep at night, you have to work out a way to keep your mouth shut at night. Now, one of the simplest ways to get an idea if your mouth's open is to check your mouth when you wake up. So if you have a dry mouth, a sore throat, an irritated throat in the morning, chances are the air's going in and out of your mouth and it's dried out your mouth. That doesn't happen when your mouth's closed because you breathe through your nose. And as we said before, the nose moistens and warms the air, so nothing dries out. So if you're waking up with a dry mouth, like if you need to reach for the glass of water on the bedside table as soon as you wake up, chances are you're breathing through your mouth. And another indication, if you wake up sort of feeling breathless, which sounds crazy because you've been asleep, but some people wake up out of breath. And you can wake up out of breath if you are breathing in excess of the needs we talked about, your metabolic requirements, and through the mouth. So even though you feel like you're not doing any athletic activity, you can still breathe to a point where you feel breathless. And that sounds counterintuitive, breathing myself into a state of breathlessness, but it's true because the biochemistry goes out of whack, out of balance, and then you feel like you haven't breathed enough, even though you're breathing quite a lot. So quite simply, and this may sound challenging to some people, the best way to do it is to get some simple paper tape and tape your mouth closed at night.
So you're saying put a strip of tape from your philtrum just below, which will be harder for you because you have hair on your lips. But
Exactly.
So from below your nose to below your bottom lip, close your mouth and see what happens.
And I rip off a part of tape about the width of my little finger. The tape itself, it's called 3M Micropore. It's about an inch in width. And then so the thickness of my little finger, boom. Of course, I have to put it on a little bit of an angle under the mustache and above the beard. I still do it now. I've developed a habit of sleeping with my mouth shut, but I also take some confidence out of the knowledge that my mouth will definitely be shut if I've got a little bit of tape on my lips. I'm definitely going to breathe through my nose. And what's been interesting over the last couple of days, I've had some nasal irritation. So I'm not breathing as easily through my nose. And I've noticed if I don't put the tape on my mouth at night, I will almost accidentally start to breathe through my mouth because my body's looking for the path of least resistance. But if I put the tape on my mouth, I still get enough air in through my nose. My body just has to work for it a little bit more. But it's better for me to do that for 7 or 8 hours than to allow myself to breathe through my mouth, because what will happen is my nose will actually get more congested and then the cycle continues.
Fascinating. Oh, I'm learning so much.
It is so fascinating.
It is. Now you mentioned asthma, and we don't have time to really go into that in this. I want to do another segment with you for sure, specifically about asthma, but let's just refer to it. So many people have asthma these days. Breathing in asthma, and what's the first step?
Oh, this is a challenging one. What's the first step? So a couple of things to bear in mind. Current statistics suggest around 11% of the population has asthma.
Wow.
I think what is happening is that number's actually going up, but the severity is going down. So we talk about it a lot more than a lot less than we used to. So, for example, in Australia in 1989, that was the year that the most deaths happened from asthma, and we've been on a steady decline here in Australia, which is wonderful. Now, a lot of that is to do with medical interventions and the medications that are able to, we call them rescue medications because they dilate the airways so people can breathe. Very important, very, very important. And if you hear me speak about medication, I'm in no way anti-medication. I'm just very much pro use it only when you need it. Don't overuse it. Don't become reliant on it. Don't make it a crutch, just like anything else. So that's been amazing. It's really important to understand that a lot of people are managing asthma at the moment, but they're not necessarily treating it. They're not getting past it. They're not investing in methods that can help them breathe better so they don't rely on medication, don't feel breathless, don't have attacks, or have less of. Anyway, so the first thing that can be really helpful for asthmatics is just understanding what your triggers are. What sets off your asthma? Now, sometimes people will say, oh, it's the weather. Definitely that can happen. It's something I'm allergic to. So a big one is dust mites. So in the bed. And that's separate to dust. I'm talking about dust mites. Dust can be a big one. So all of these things can add up. But the big one that people aren't talking about is stress. Stress and anxiety, and any of those mental challenges that see the mind get full and anxious and overwhelmed. That dynamic, no matter what you label it, creates tension in the body and can lead to breathing dysfunction, can lead to hyperventilation, which can then lead to asthma. So first thing is becoming intimately aware of your own triggers. An easy way to do that is just to keep a journal. Whether you write in it every day or not, and I would suggest if you want to get a really good idea of your health and wellness in and around breathing, keep a journal every day. Today I felt wonderful. Sun was out, and you can write the date down so you understand that, okay, there was no pollen in the air and it was quite a dry day. It wasn't windy, so I didn't have any asthma things. Or Christmas had asthma again. I have asthma at Christmas all the time. Maybe that's because all of your family comes over and you get stressed out and you have a bit more alcohol and maybe a bit more inflammatory food. And, oh, there's an interesting dynamic for me to explore. Because we need to take personal responsibility for this journey. Doctors do not have enough time to sit and analyze every aspect of a person's life to determine what's causing asthma. So they'll give you the big 3 or 5 triggers. And if you don't fit into that, then you're on your own. So learning this stuff for yourself is really important. And then we get back to where we started, which is shut your mouth and breathe through your nose. And it starts there.
That's so interesting. And I love what you said. We have to take personal responsibility for our journey. That's what Mind Myself is all about, is helping people become their own best health advocates, because it really is important. And I like what you said, doctors just don't have time. And so you said, if you're having breath issues, keep a journal. I think that's a fabulous idea, no matter what health journey you're on.
Absolutely.
Because if you start tracking, then that can help you notice your patterns. And especially as you're talking about with breath, something that we do all the time, but most of us don't really spend a lot of time thinking about. That's a very powerful tool, I think. I love that suggestion. So, and calming your nervous system. We have to find ways to be calm, especially if our breathing is affected.
Exactly. So that ties into asthma. Very, very tight connection. It's very rarely the state that one will be having an asthma attack and feel calm. Right. Now, if you can learn how to adjust and control your breathing to tell your body that you're calm, you can start to unwind what's happening, and that can have a positive effect on your symptoms. Now, that doesn't mean that you won't need medication, that maybe you won't need emergency assistance, but it can help you not spiral further out of control. To practice a method of calming the breathing down. And again, the first step there is shutting the mouth. Now, I can tell you from personal experience, and any asthmatics listening to this, they might be up in arms, but it is tough to shut your mouth because you feel like you need to breathe more. But I promise you, when you practice it, you can do it because you can get enough air in. And then you can calm the nervous system down. So there is an important aspect of breathing less, even when you feel like you need to breathe more, because you can do it in an efficient and effective way where you get enough, not too much. And that's very, very important, especially when symptoms are big, when they're taking hold.
And what strikes me as you're talking is, if somebody has breathing issues and they come and see you, for instance, the Breath Geek, and do a session or 2 or 5 or whatever it is, and you learn how to control or adjust or monitor and be aware of your breathing when you're not in crisis, then you're going to have the capacity to use that tool should a crisis occur, and you're going to be prepared in a new way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly it. So I've created a system that I call the breathing blueprint. And it's 4 steps. I start with awareness. So you understand where you are, how your breath works, what's happening for you right now. You have a toolkit to assess yourself as you're moving through the day. Are my symptoms about? Are they about? Are they almost here? And then you have the tools to get in the way, to pause, to stop, to limit, to reduce. And then we move into control. How can I control my breathing to practice? Much like going to the gym and you do your exercises to get stronger. How can I practice breath control to have stronger, better breathing, more efficient, more effective breathing? So I can breathe less when I need to, or I can breathe more when I need to. Like, I am in control. It's mine. And then we move into optimizing. Like, what are the little 1%ers to take us from just okay to extraordinary? And then the last one, which some people get to, is expand, where we start to explore ways of self-mastery and self-actualization through breathing. So a systematic step-by-step method like this gives someone who's interested the confidence that they have the toolkit to deal with these things. And then there's less chance of panic, which feeds into breathing dysfunction. So it is important to understand what to do, when to do it, and how to do it.
I love that. And we hear, as a wrap up, we're coming to the end of our conversation here, but meditation and mindfulness. How does your methodology, or how does breathing from your perspective fit into meditation and mindfulness?
Both meditation and mindfulness can't exist without breath. The breath is the center of both practices. In fact, most mindfulness teachers will start with breath awareness before they have any expansion in the awareness into other areas of mindfulness. The breath becomes the first focal point, the first point of awareness. Same is often true with meditation. So even if you have a mantra or you're listening to a led meditation, the breath is still the foundation. And anyone who has any experience in these things, often the suggestion is when the mind wanders, bring it back to the breath.
Right.
So it's integral. It is the key, the core, the foundation of all of those practices. And you can look at the more esoteric ancient pranayama practices where they look at the pauses in the breath being the moments where you have connection with divinity, because to be human, you must breathe. So if you look at divinity, there's no breath. A very interesting concept. So a lot of what they're looking at in those, and these are very advanced methods. This is not optimal breathing per se. This is where you're looking in the expansion phase of my program, and even beyond that, that in those pauses in between the breaths where there is no breath, that's when you can have some amazing realizations.
Fascinating. And so if somebody's approaching mindfulness or meditation, would you still use that little acronym LSD as you're starting out?
I would.
Okay.
I start with a practice that focuses on D first.
Okay.
So deepening the breath is where I start people, because there's a lot involved in understanding the mechanics of the breathing when you start to breathe with your diaphragm again. The easiest way to activate your diaphragm is to close your mouth and use your nose. So a lot of things start to occur at once. And it's almost taking something that's quite complicated and making it simple for someone to practice. And often, if you look at meditation and mindfulness, belly breathing will be a part of it. It's very rare that someone asks you to breathe into the chest when you're doing a calming technique. And if they do, they're doing it wrong. I'm quite happy to be black and white about that. It doesn't work. Now, that said, there are other pranayama exercises that are activating, and you do breathe up into the chest on purpose because they're about lifting the energy up. That's for a specific purpose. It's not calming. It's not meditation. It's not mindfulness. It's quite different.
Right. Wow. We could just carry on for hours talking about this. This has been so fascinating, Adam. And what's one thing you'd like to leave your listener with today? And before you do that, I highly encourage people to seek you out And if you have any breathing issues or any curiosity around breathing or any questions, wow, you would be the resource I'd go to first, for sure.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Look, if anyone is looking for me, breathgeek.com. Easiest way to find me. That way you don't have to try and remember how to spell my last name. Nice and easy. It's a bit funny, breathgeek.com. One thing, okay. If I can leave you with one thing, I would invite you to stop for 5 minutes today and sit somewhere or lie down and do nothing. And see if your awareness can move to the breath. Don't be attached to or judgmental about the experience. Just see if you can focus on your breath. And if you get to the next level is see how your breath changes when you pay attention to it. It's a really good start. Just forming that connection with your own breathing. And then you can tap into the power of it and make some big changes in your life.
Wow, I have loved this conversation. Thank you, Adam, for taking your time,
Thanks,
for
Esther.
being here. And I can't wait to have this on the Mind Myself website. Thank you.
Most welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being with us at the Mind Myself podcast today. We know that time is precious and you've spent some of your valuable time with us. We're grateful. If you would like to reach out to our guests directly, the information is below. And if you would like more from Mind Myself, that information is also below. Please visit our website and check out all the information about the different complementary, holistic, and integrative healthcare approaches, information about health issues, more podcasts, tons of blogs, and we even have a community page for you where you could reach out and tell your story safely, or you could ask questions and perhaps somebody else in the world is going through something similar to you. In any case, we're so glad you're with us, and we're doing this because you matter.